My name is James Robert, and this story still feels like a bad dream I haven't woken up from. But it's real, and if you've ever had a loved one rely on something as critical as a dialysis machine, you'll understand exactly why I'm still furious. That morning started out like any other. I was up by 6:15 a.m., brewing coffee and making sure my son, Caleb, had everything he needed for his dialysis appointment. He's only 13 years old, but he's already tougher than most grown men I know. Born with underdeveloped kidneys, he's been on a strict medical schedule for most of his life. 3 times a week, like clockwork, we head into town for his dialysis treatments. Missing one isn't just an inconvenience, it can be dangerous. So, like always, I double-checked his bag, blanket, snacks, water bottle, and headphones. I helped him get dressed, made him a quick breakfast, and by 7:10, we were walking to the garage. I remember joking with him about how bad my coffee tasted that morning. He smiled. He's got one of those smiles that somehow still lights up a room, even on days he's not feeling well. We didn't know then how badly the day would go. I backed the car out, turned on the radio, and headed toward the front gate of our gated community. It's an automatic gate controlled by the HOA, opens with a fob or remote. We've had issues before: slow responses, gate stalling, sometimes stuck halfway. But nothing like this. As I turned the final corner and rolled up to the gate, I saw it immediately. A heavy-duty orange chain looped through the bars and padlocked shut. No blinking lights, no movement. Just cold steel keeping us inside at first. I honestly thought it had to be some kind of construction thing or emergency maintenance. But then I noticed something, or rather, someone standing off to the side. There she was, Karen, the infamous HOA president. Arms crossed, clipboard tucked under one elbow, phone in the other hand. She wasn't even pretending to be surprised. She was just standing there, watching. I pulled up closer and rolled down the window. "Karen, the gate's locked." "What's going on?" She barely looked at me. "There was a notice posted last week. You didn't pay your HOA dues. Gate access is restricted until it's resolved." I blinked. "What are you talking about?" "I paid in full in March." She shrugged. "Records show otherwise. You'll need to take that up with the board." I started feeling the pressure build in my chest. "Karen, my son has a medical appointment, dialysis. We're going to be late." She finally looked me in the eye. Her expression didn't change. "Rules are rules. The lock stays on until you settle your account." My jaw clenched. I opened my banking app and pulled up the transaction. "Here. Right here, March 3rd, $385. It's paid." She glanced at it like she was looking at an Instagram post she didn't care about. "Then I suggest you email the treasurer. But the gate stays locked until the system updates." I could feel the panic rising. I looked back at Caleb. He was already pale from being overdue for fluids. He doesn't like to say it out loud, but I can tell when he's not feeling right. I looked back at Karen. "Please. This isn't a pool pass or lawn violation. This is medical. Let me through." And then she said the words that made my blood go cold. "It's not my problem. Should have kept up with the paperwork." I revved. The engine slightly tempted to just drive around the side or try to force the lock. But we're boxed in high hedges, concrete walls. One entrance, in and out. She knew that. It was part of the security that the HOA was so proud of. I jumped out of the car and stormed up to her. "You're really going to stand here and keep a sick kid from getting his dialysis? Are you serious right now?" She stepped back, phone still up, like she was ready to call security or the police. "If you touch me or damage property, you'll be arrested. I'm just following board policy." I stood there for a moment, stunned. I could feel every second ticking by, and with it, the risk to my son's health getting worse. I took a breath and called 911. The dispatcher asked if this was an emergency. Yes, I said. My son needs urgent dialysis treatment, and our HOA president has locked the only gate out of our neighborhood. They didn't seem to know what to do with that. I repeated it again, this time slower. Eventually, they said they'd dispatch someone to the location. 20 minutes went by. I sat back in the car, holding Caleb's hand, trying to stay calm. He asked, "Are we still going, Dad?" I smiled at him, trying to fake confidence. "Yeah, buddy. We're just waiting for some help to open the gate." By the time the fire department and a patrol unit showed up, another 10 minutes had passed. They examined the lock, spoke briefly with Karen, who handed them her paperwork like she was a clerk at a post office, and finally took bolt cutters to the chain. The gate swung open slowly. I didn't say a word to Karen. I just hit the gas and sped down the street, heart pounding the whole way. We arrived at the dialysis center 2 hours late. The nurse on duty looked concerned. Caleb had to wait until they could squeeze him into a later slot, which meant more waiting, more exhaustion, and a tougher time stabilizing his levels. The doctor pulled me aside. "This isn't good. He'll be okay this time, but you cannot let this happen again. Missing dialysis isn't like missing a dentist appointment. It builds up quickly." I nodded, but I was furious. This wasn't a system glitch or a misunderstanding. This was punishment. Karen used her position to flex control in the pettiest way possible, and it put a child's life at risk. That morning had started off like every other. But by the end of it, I knew I wasn't just going to move on. We got home late that night. Caleb was exhausted, pale, quiet, not his usual self. I knew he was trying to be tough for my sake, but I could see the toll it had taken. Missing even part of a dialysis session is dangerous. When toxins build up in his system, his blood pressure spikes, his energy crashes, and he starts getting headaches and nausea. All because someone decided a $385 payment was more important than a child's life. I kept thinking about what she said. Rules don't bend for special cases. That line kept playing in my head like a broken record. After putting Caleb to bed, I went straight to the kitchen and opened my laptop. I pulled up the HOA website, clicked into the Payments tab, and downloaded my transaction history. Just like I told her, the payment was made March 3, 2025 through their portal. Same account I always used. I even had the confirmation email with a receipt ID and TIMESTAMP. So why was I locked out? I clicked over to the contact page and sent emails to every board member. Attached the screenshots, the confirmation, and a very polite but extremely firm message. I need answers by tomorrow morning. What happened today was unacceptable, and someone will be held responsible. I didn't expect a response right away, but to my surprise, I got one within 20 minutes. It was from the HOA treasurer, a guy named Alan who normally just handles spreadsheets and stays out of drama. His reply read, "Hi James, just looked into this. Your payment shows up on our bank ledger, but somehow the system flagged your lot as unpaid due to a duplicate entry in our backend. I'll fix this tonight and make sure the flag is removed. Really sorry about the confusion." Alani stared at the message, dumbfounded. So basically, Karen had access to the same system and could have verified this in seconds, but instead, she saw a red mark next to my name and decided to go full dictator. I replied and asked, "Did Karen see the same thing?" He responded a few minutes later, "Yeah, she had access. All board members do." But honestly, this error should have been caught. I sat there for a few minutes just processing that. She knew. Or at least she didn't care enough to check. The next morning, I was still seething. I called a few other parents and the neighborhood ones I knew from school events and the community pool. I told them what happened. Some of them were shocked. Others weren't. One neighbor, Tina, said, "Karen's been on a power trip. ever. Since she took over, last month she tried to fine me for having too many pumpkins on my porch. Another said Karen once threatened to tow their car for parking a few inches over the painted line. This wasn't new behavior, it was just escalating. Later that day, I got a voicemail from Karen. "Hi James, this is Karen. I heard there was some issue with the gate yesterday. I just wanted to clarify that I was following policy as outlined in Section 14 of the Community Bylaws. Any disputes can be filed with the HOA in writing. Hope Caleb is doing okay." No apology, no ownership. Just a robotic message pretending. She hadn't almost caused a medical emergency. I wasn't going to let that slide. I called my lawyer. I've known Mark since college. He's helped me with business stuff in the past, but this time was personal. I explained the whole situation, sent him the gate footage, the payment receipt, and Karen's voicemail. After reviewing everything, he said, "James, this might actually rise to the level of criminal negligence. She knowingly obstructed your ability to seek medical care for your child. That's not just an HOA issue. That's a legal one." He advised me to document everything: the 911 call record, hospital visit, summary, doctor's warning, gate footage from my Ring Cam emails, and HOA documents. Then he said something that stuck with me. "If this had gone a little differently, your son could have ended up in the hospital. Or worse." Karen Mitov just cost herself a lot more than her HOA position. At that point, I knew I wasn't the only one dealing with this woman. So I posted on our neighborhood Facebook group. I kept it professional, factual. I wrote to my neighbors. "Yesterday morning, my son, who requires life-saving dialysis, was blocked from exiting the community gate due to a lock placed by the HOA president. Despite clear evidence of payment, I was told rules are rules and left waiting for emergency personnel to open the gate. This could have endangered my son's life. I've confirmed the payment was in fact made, and the system error has been acknowledged by the HOA treasurer. Please consider how leadership decisions affect real lives. I'll be pursuing this legally." James Robert. Within an hour, the comments started rolling in. People were furious. "This is insane. That could have been my kid. Karen needs to be removed. Now, I never liked her power trips. This crossed a major line. Let us know how we can help, James." Apparently, I wasn't alone. Someone even shared a screenshot of Karen arguing with another neighbor about whether wind chimes counted as auditory pollution. Another shared an old video of her yelling at a teenager for skateboarding on the sidewalk. By the end of the day, someone had already started a petition to remove her from the board. That evening, the HOA sent out an email, subject, "Urgent Board Meeting Friday at 6 p.m. Dear residents, due to recent events, the HOA will be holding an emergency meeting regarding board leadership, gate policies, and system access errors. Residents are encouraged to attend and voice concerns." It was happening. People were waking up, but for me, this wasn't about politics. It wasn't about HOA bylaws. It was about my son, a 13-year-old boy who almost missed vital treatment because someone in power thought enforcing a rule was more important than saving a life. Karen had made her choice. Now it was my turn. The emergency HOA meeting was packed. I've lived in this community for 8 years, and I had never seen a turnout like that before, not for the 4th of July parade. Not even for that one summer when the pool filter broke and half the neighborhood complained for weeks. But this was different. This wasn't about minor annoyances or petty disputes. It was about someone in power abusing her authority and putting a child's life at risk. People were lined up outside the rec center before the doors opened. Some brought their kids. Others carried printed versions of my Facebook post. A few even had signs. HOA does not equal dictatorship. No more Karen chaos, and James, we got your back. The board sat at a fold-out table near the front of the room. Karen was there, 2 arms crossed, lips tight, that same smug expression she always wore like a badge of superiority. She clearly hadn't expected this many people to show up. The look in her eyes said it all. She was losing control. The meeting opened with the HOA secretary trying to calm things down. She welcomed everyone and said the floor would be opened for comments, but only one speaker at a time. I was the first to raise my hand, not because I needed the spotlight, but because I needed the truth to be heard. Straight from me, I walked up to the microphone, heart pounding, but I didn't waver. I looked out over the crowd and said, "My name is James Robert. Most of you know me, and many of you know my son, Caleb. He's 13, he's smart, funny, and strong. He also has chronic kidney disease, which means he depends on dialysis. Treatments 3 times a week just to survive. Last Monday, we were heading out to his appointment like we always do. Only this time, the community gate was locked shut with a heavy chain and padlock. I asked Karen to open it. I showed her my son. I showed her the schedule. I even showed her proof that I had paid my dues, but she didn't listen. She didn't care. Her exact words were, "Rules don't bend for special cases." And because of that, my son was 2 hours late to receive life-saving treatment. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a glitch. This was deliberate indifference. It could have cost my son his life. The room was silent. Even the usual grumblers in the back were dead quiet. Karen still hadn't moved. Her arms were still crossed, but now her eyes darted nervously as more neighbors stared at her like they were seeing her for the first time. I continued. "I filed a report with the police. I've spoken with an attorney, and yes, I'm pursuing legal action. Not just because of what happened to my family, but because it could have happened to any of you. Think about it. What if it had been your elderly parent who needed to get to the ER, or your spouse, or your child? The HOA was never meant to control our lives. It was meant to support this community. Karen has twisted it into a tool for punishment and power." Round of applause broke out, then another, and suddenly people were lining up to speak. One after another, neighbors told their own stories how Karen fined them for garden flags, how she banned chalk art, how she tried to charge a woman $100 for hanging laundry out to dry on her porch. Someone said she tried to stop their son's graduation party for being too loud during the day, and then came Tina. She stepped up to the mic with tears in her eyes. "James, I remember when Caleb was a baby. I saw you walking him in that stroller around the block. To think that anyone could block that child from receiving care just because of a computer glitch or some unpaid fees, disgusting." Karen finally stood up. "I followed HOA policy. I didn't do anything illegal. The gate was locked because our system flagged non-payment, and that's the procedure. If the board wants to revise policy, fine. But don't act like I'm a villain." The treasurer, Alan, the same guy who confirmed my payments, stood up and said, "Karen, we both know the system isn't perfect. You had access to the ledger and could have confirmed the payment with 2 clicks. Instead, you chose to enforce the flag and ignore a medical emergency. That's not policy. That's negligence." People started shouting, "Resign. Right. Her out? You almost killed a kid." The board called for order and then, finally, announced that a vote would be held right then and there on whether to remove Karen from her position as HOA president. According to the bylaws, a 2/3 majority was needed. They passed out ballots. People voted. It wasn't even close. Karen was removed as HOA president with a 93% vote in favor. She stormed out without saying a word, ignoring the crowd, the cameras, and the dozens of angry glances thrown her way. After the meeting, neighbors came up to me one by one. They shook my hand. Some hugged me. A few cried. One elderly man said, "My wife's on dialysis too. Thank you for standing up. You might have saved someone else from going through this." But the story didn't end there. The footage I had. From my ring camera, the confrontation at the gate, Karen's words. The paramedics cutting the lock ended up making its way to the local news. And then to a few online channels, the national outlets. The headline: HOA President locks out family, delays dialysis for child. Reporters called. I did a few interviews. My inbox was flooded with people sharing their own HOA horror stories. Some were heartbreaking. Some were enraging. But all of them had one thing in common. People are tired of HOA leaders acting like tyrants. As for the lawsuit, it's still pending. My lawyer believes we have a strong case, not just for negligence, but for emotional distress and endangerment. And I intend to follow through with it, because this isn't about revenge. It's about setting a precedent, so that no other child has to wait for treatment because someone wanted to prove a point. So that power-hungry HOA leaders know they're not above consequences. And so that people like Karen never forget. You don't mess with a parent trying to protect their kid down. Every time I drive through that gate unlocked, working and unchained, I smile. Caleb sits beside me, headphones in, watching his favorite shows, unaware of just how close he came to real danger. But I'll never forget. And neither will this community.